Welcome to Work From Your Happy Place, the podcast that equips you with the tools, know-how, and motivation to live your dreams and find your happy place. Be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter for a recap of the week's guests and a preview of what's in store. To sign up, simply text the word Happy Place with no space to 33444. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the host of Work From Your Happy Place, Belinda Ellsworth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Work From Your Happy Place. I'm your host, Belinda Ellsworth, and I am very excited about our guest today, and I know you are going to be too. I have Mike Horne with me, and Mike is the author of Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically. He is a people and culture leader, helping leaders to bring their best to every situation. He works with them to advance and to achieve professionalism, team, and organizational goals. He brings imagination, vision, optimism, and genuine real-life experiences to help leaders understand their desires and motivations, and most importantly, the needs of those that lead. His advice and guidance are proven to help leaders bring out the best of themselves, their groups, and their organizations. It is my pleasure to welcome Micah to our show today.
Belinda Ellsworth, I am delighted to be a guest on your show today and to have an opportunity to speak with you and your audience on topics that are important to all of us, and to have an opportunity as well to discuss the concepts in my new book, Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically. So again, Belinda, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
I am as well. You know, between my two podcasts, I had just a few minutes and I was flipping through LinkedIn and just saw a really interesting article on leadership. And then there was quite a banter back and forth about what that really means to lead. And I think there is a lot of discussion around this today. And I think that leading authentically, just elaborate on that a little bit more for us, if you will.
Sure. Leadership is a perennial topic. I think that we often, in human resources and working in organizations, we think about people, we think about culture. Those are two things. And maybe it's leadership and culture as the different sides of the same coin. It's hard to think about culture. It's difficult to think about leadership in separation. So for me, working and thinking about integrity and working and living authentically means that we're able to bring more of who we are to what we do and bring our best to every situation.
Great. And I know earlier we were talking about words, actions, the way that we think, and I was really intrigued by that. Let's talk a little bit about sort of these ABCs. I know you like to label them. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Right. In our preparation for today's discussion, Belinda and I talked about attitudes, behaviors, and cognitions. Or, what I say is, if I want to be authentic, my words and actions need to match, and even better, my ways of thinking. And we might just frame that as a set of attitudes, a set of behaviors, what I do, and a set of cognitions, the ways of thinking. And when we find alignment, we find authenticity. When we find that our words and actions match, we find authenticity. And this provides us with the opportunity for happiness. That the research is clear that we enjoy working with happy people and enjoy having managers who are generally happy people. I don't mean the kind of happiness that comes from having a new boyfriend or having a new girlfriend or the birth of a child, but rather the kind of sustained happiness that encourages teamwork, collaboration, and productivity, and hopefully results in innovation for the organization. That's why I think it's so important to get these attitudes, behaviors, and cognitions right in order to lead and work authentically.
Absolutely. So, Mike, tell us a little bit more about your journey and a little bit more about what you're doing to help people do this effectively today.
My mission is to advance authentic leadership in the world, and I do that through coaching and consulting to executives and aspiring leaders in organizations, typically at pain points that many are familiar with. It could be at a transition as somebody moves from being a manager to a manager of managers. It could be on a transition of leaving an organization after a storied career in it. Any number of transitions. I also work with people on their blind spots, on issues that they're unable to see, and yet others are observing. So working on those blind spots with people with the degrees of candor, with degrees of affection and warmth. And then thirdly is to work with folks on their goal-directed behavior. So many of the folks we work with are talented and smart people who know what they want to accomplish, but their success, they've grown their success by doing certain things very well. And often, in order to move to the next level, to advance, to grow, to develop, it requires a new action. And I can help people with those sorts of activities around transition, around their goal-directed behaviors, and around identifying those kinds of blind spots that people may have that prevent their growth and development.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about how your business has shaped your lifestyle today.
Well, I've been so lucky to experience many different facets of working and leading in organizations. Look, all of us have experience with organizations. Many people don't realize that our experience with organizations begins at birth. For most people who are not born into homes or who are born in hospitals, I mean, that is an early experience with organizations, because hospitals have their own rules and procedures that may vary from one hospital to another, and you experience a set of care. So I've always been attracted, I might say, from birth to the study of organizations and people. And I went into it with an idea that organizations were paragons of virtue, that everyone was interested in teamwork and everyone was interested in fulfilling a purpose and mission of an organization. It wasn't until I started managing and working inside organizations that I realized that they weren't all that they were cracked up to be in terms of paragons of virtue, these organizations. Rather, they were interesting places filled with politics and backstabbing. And, someone might ask me, well, have you ever met an authentic jerk, Mike? And I say, sure, I have. But it's this ability, again, to understand, what values are important to you. So I think about some of the career steps I had as a Peace Corps volunteer, getting to learn and understand different cultures, as an employee relations manager, working with people on the differences that existed between their collective bargaining representative and their employer. And then in successive leadership positions, leading human resources teams and organizations around the globe, really working on helping people to contribute to their prosperity and to their work through, and to their life through meaningful work.
Great. What would you? We hear this term thrown around a lot: be authentic and have integrity. But what would you identify as 3-4 things that people need to do to be more authentic? Because I think there's a lot of confusion around what that means.
Well, I think the first thing is just be honest. Your words matter. What you do matters. Think about sometimes the unintended consequences of executive remarks. An offhand remark might lead to 20 people doing a project. So, words matter. People who say they don't, I take difference. Words matter. The second thing I'd say is don't cheat. It's very important to carry this honesty through in what you do. And I might also say that you want to keep your word. So be honest, keep your word, match your words and actions. And if I was to offer a fourth item, it would be don't skimp, don't cheat. Strive to bring more of who you are to every situation. And I think the kinds of results that you'll experience relative to authenticity will increase.
Wow, that is great. I know we hear be honest, keep your word, make your actions align with your words. I mean, I hear that a lot, but the don't cheat and don't skimp. I mean, don't skimp mean bring your best to the table and go that little bit of an extra mile because it's real easy oftentimes not to. So I love this little tip in here because I don't think it's one that we hear as often as we do some of the others.
Well, and so true, Belinda. I often ask audiences and folks with whom I meet if they're more authentic at work or at home. And just this morning, I did that. I was speaking with a group of sales managers, about 50 of them. And the results to me were just extraordinary. 90% said I'm more authentic at home than at work. And I just think of, my career as a team leader. That's a lot to leave on the table. And I wonder often, what are the actions that prevent us from bringing our best to every situation? And a lot of that has to do with the manager, the values of the organization, and how we create environments where we can do our best. We used to talk about forming great places to work, and it's a wonderful idea. It's a wonderful notion. I've led great place to work campaigns in a few organizations, but what I now believe is we need to create places where people are able to do their best work, and that requires a lot of managerial flexibility, and I believe happens easiest, and we produce the greatest time to value through authentic leadership.
Well, that's great. So let's talk now about kind of your superpowers. Like, what are two of your greatest skill sets that you have used in order to help you be successful throughout these years?
Well, I'm going to summarize it in three categories, Belinda, or three ideas. The first is to bring hope to a situation. There are so many situations where people have disagreements in organizations or their teams fail to meet their objectives because they're unable to figure out a way out of their situation. So what I'm particularly gifted at is bringing hope to a situation. Even when the goals seem incompatible in nature, there's always a way to look up. In organizations, when we're feuding, look at a stakeholder, usually a customer, and we're generally able to align on these things. So the first thing is I bring hope. The second thing is presence, is to be present in the time and the moments that I have with you right in front of me. I don't know what happened to you yesterday, Belinda. I don't know what happened to you 5 minutes ago, and I don't know what's going to happen to you tomorrow. But I do know I have this moment in time with you to be present. And the third thing is I bring discernment as a superpower. And discernment is all about figuring out what's work and what's not work. What should we have fun with? What is going to fuel our purpose? So for me, it's those ideas around hope and presence and discernment that frame the ways in which I interact and engage with others so that they can bring more of who they are and their best to every situation.
I know you shared a little story with us about your work. I believe it was at Marriott. And I'd love you to share that.
I often think about situations where we don't care, and maybe all of the leadership work boils down, and we talked about attitudes, behaviors, and cognitions, but let's even distill that further, maybe into 2 bullet points. And those 2 bullets or those 2 actions, they're more than bullet points. They're ways of being and doing. But the first is that you have to show you care. If you don't care, it's hard to do much of anything. And I'll illustrate that with maybe 1 or 2 stories. But you have to care, and then you have to do the work. I was thinking about at a time when I was at Marriott International, and the company was doubling in size at that time. And I had an opportunity to work with a number of executives, including the chief financial officer. And one day I was facilitating a meeting, and they went into a deep technical analysis of some financial items, and I was sort of askew and probably buried in my phone doing some other things. And the CFO looked over at me and said, "Mike, do you care about our business?" It was a giant wake-up call that was also reinforced by one of my dear mentors and colleagues who one time asked me, what if you did care, when I responded to a statement, "Oh, I don't care about that." So these acts of caring really do make a difference. And then beyond our care, you have to show up and do the work. And that's how I believe we make progress. And isn't that what we all want?
Absolutely. So there's already a lot of talk around this coming out of this pandemic and what that's going to look like for a lot of people and kind of the word of the year and some of these different things. And I was just actually listening to a top executive that's a lot of trendsetters and brands and things like that. And they were saying hope is going to be a big word, and yellow is going to be a big color for what a lot of people do. And because yellow and hope is represented in this yellow. And so I was listening to this and I'm listening to you, and I couldn't agree more. And I just read an awesome book from one of our podcast guests, Hope is a Verb. And so I was reading that just this last weekend. I read the whole thing on Sunday. And so can you elaborate just a little bit when you say you like to bring hope to a situation? How do you bring hope to a situation?
Well, I think there are a couple of ways that everyone is capable of doing that. If there's one thing that the pandemic taught us, and as now we move into this endemic stage with COVID, is work is what we do. It's not a place we go to. I mean, if we've learned that, work is what we do. It's not a place we go. And we need more managers who are capable of stepping into their Zoom meetings or their Microsoft Team meetings. Because as we move into this new period, it's going to be all about creating community as a way of making progress in organizations, of raising revenues, of raising profitability. Together, we all rise through authenticity and hope. And that's what I think we need more of in organizations if we're to engage people. I've thought my new book, Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically, launched on May 11th, available on Amazon. So just 2 weeks ago. And I reflected right before the launch or right at the launch about what really drove me to write this book. And I think I have it figured out now for myself. And it is that I wrote this book so that people could have a best friend at work. I believe
that's lovely.
I believe in all of the Gallup research. You know, Gallup has 12 questions that they ask employees around the world about engagement. And one of those items or questions is, I have a best friend at work. Agree or disagree? It's a predictor of engagement. But it's also a way of knowing that someone has your back at work. Or Belinda, just imagine how wonderful it can be to inspire hope in someone when I say to them, hey, Belinda, you've got this. Mm-hmm. It just changes a way of thinking and being for others, is to have this best friend at work. And the research, again, is quite clear that it promotes engagement.
All right, let's talk about great accomplishments, and then we'll talk about maybe some challenges. So a great accomplishment stands out for you?
Oh, I have probably a couple. One is to have a clear feeling once a day. Just to be expressive, to be clear on what I'm feeling, because so often I think in this work you can get caught up in your head or caught up somewhere else. So to be clear about my feelings, to be able to express those, I think that is certainly something that I would call a positive or a contribution. And perhaps the second item, in addition, is to be able to slow the world down through reflection and then speed it up. And maybe that's the process of slowing things down to go faster, the ability to put things in a spotlight so that we can understand them and work on those, whether those be projects at work or perhaps our greatest piece of work, which is ourselves. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst, said 3 things that informed my work in the book, Integrity by Design, and perhaps is central to the themes that we've been discussing, Belinda. The one thing that Jung said is that you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. You are what you do, not what you'll say you'll do. And then secondly, his observation that the privilege of a lifetime is to become the person you are. So we've got these two wonderful things about knowing that we are what we do, knowing that our privilege in life is to become the person we are. But he made a third observation, which I think is what gives us the work, is you really can't do anything about the first two without accepting where you are and accepting the state. So we have to gain some acceptance of where we are and who we are, stock taking, identity taking, in order to begin a process of wanting and advancing authentic leadership.
Yeah, there's been a lot around that too. I've been really diving into kind of a lot of these thought processes, and it really is interesting about just that whole concept and idea behind that. So
Right.
I love it.
And we want our, I love what you say in terms of exploring those thoughts. These are matters of action, right? These are matters that we have to take out of the cognition and put into behaviors. And how does how does someone begin to do that authentically at work? I think one way is that we trust. And if you find it difficult to trust other people, and people come from all kinds of different perspectives in this, in an organization, in a work team, trust the purpose of the organization. That can allow for multiple ways of doing things, different ways of doing things, but we want to build trust in the purpose of the organization. So as we build that trust, we know that trust arises from a set of values, and values inform those behaviors. So let's trust, let's inspire, let's guide, and let's be willing to be influenced. There's nothing more, I think, fun about work and having a meaningful, productive relationship with another person when you know that they can influence you and you can be influenced by them. I mean, it's a great exchange of agency.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about your accomplishments. Was there a challenge or a time, an obstacle that you faced, and how did you choose to work through that? And do you have a great story
Well,
or an example of that?
it's a lot like integrity, isn't it?
Mhm.
That integrity gets tested over life. Integrity gets tested as a child, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, of how we think about integrity. But again, being of whole cloth, being something that's genuine. So I think that the actions that I take are to be able to laugh at myself, to laugh at the context, but to understand that my behavior, the ways that I show up, are really a factor of my personality and what I am doing to shape the environment that I am in, or how the environment is shaping me. People have choices every day, right, to create psychological
Mhm.
safety at work, to create psychological safety in their relationships with others. We have that opportunity. Often, people choose not to. One executive said to me once, "Hey, Mike, if we could figure out a way to make money without people, we'd do it." And I've often thought that was one of the saddest commentaries on
Oh my gosh.
organizational life that I've heard. Hey, I don't mind the capitalistic tendency to make money. I'm fine with that. But this idea that enterprise is something other than human is what saddens me. All enterprise is human enterprise.
Oh my gosh. And if people would really stop and think about that, just that one sentence, they would behave better.
Sure, and we're moving into a world, I think, where what we tried to do was predict. Let's predict what's going to happen. Let's encourage more predictability in our systems. All of that's fine. It shouldn't be ignored. But I think as many people re-enter the workforce in new ways, as new teams are filled because workers have been displaced and other things, we have that opportunity to extend and to say to another person that you're important, that everyone in an organization, and this is difficult for me to say in many ways, everyone deserves to be loved. Now, as a corporate executive, I used to disguise that in all kinds of different ways. I would talk about, oh, can we have a little more warmth here? How about some affection, though I don't discourage any displays of affection in the workplace. But it's a way of beginning to think about it, and I think reflect the kinds of values that are important to us. So many organizations, they put integrity up as like their number one value. Look, if you go in the Wayback Machine, Belinda, let's go to Enron. It certainly didn't mean anything there, right? And yet it was their number one value. Want to update that a little more recently? Let's think about Wells Fargo, which espoused integrity as a value. It's difficult, I think, when you're in one of these embattled organizations. I often wonder, how does a person's head hang when they are in these in these kinds of organizations?
I think you hit it on the head about just the human interactions, and people start to take the human piece out of it. Like, who is this going to affect? How are our actions what's going to be the result of that? And that there's real human beings that are out there, that our activity, our actions, our words, our everything is going to have an impact on an individual, and really thinking about that individual. And I think that people, even in the reciprocal role of a customer, we do and I can say this like 100% because I've lived it for 26 years. Our customers always come first. We always bend over backwards and do everything that we can for them. I've always said to any staff I've hired, always lean in their benefit. If they're really, you've got my permission. You don't have to come to ask me if they want something free or give them this gift. I had a whole little set of little gifts or things that I said, throw this in their order, do this. You've got my permission. You don't have to come and ask me every time. I want you to be empowered to listen to the situation and understand that. So I know that customer service, I've taught it for years. I live it. It's what I walk. And yet it's so disarming and discouraging when a customer who isn't even picking up the phone sends us this absolutely most horrific email or text message or messaging before we've had a chance to even take care of it. And like, would you really say that to my face? Like, I think there's the other side of it on how we interact and behave with everyone
Sure.
On the customer's part too.
Yes. And, sometimes people ask me, are there authentic jerks? And I say, sure there are, right? I mean, we've experienced them. We've met them. And I think that's the difference about where do you lead from? What's the set of values that you're leading from? And for me, it's this set of humanistic values that says to people that you matter. And maybe that customer on that particular day didn't feel that, he or she mattered, despite how well and the extraordinary efforts that your team or teammates took to make sure that the client mattered. Sometimes it's, again, we don't know. But like, getting that scathing email or scathing message from the client, it's another opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And I took it. I said, I was trying to respond. I'm not a real fast typer on my phone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'd already jumped
sure.
into bed, and I'm not super fast. I can't do it with my thumbs. I'm a one-pointer finger.
Right.
So it's just the way it is and whatever. And so I was trying to type. And while I was trying to type to her, she was already sending the next message, and then I couldn't respond fast enough. And she was like, I knew that this was just a bot and this is just automated. And I knew this wasn't even a person.
Oh my goodness.
And then I was like, and then I said, first of all, this is me. You're actually talking to the owner of the company. I jumped into bed and decided to just answer this message because you seemed super upset and I couldn't type as fast as you were writing. And then I said, I'm happy to take care of you. And then there was this backpedaling of, oh, this is a real human being. And, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought this was I just thought this was a computerized chat bot. And but what they're not looking at is, what if it wasn't? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then they were backpedaling and saying, I'm so sorry. And then we took care of them and they were happy. But it's like, and you're right, I need to stop and think, obviously in that person's life, which I wasn't mean back, I never am, but like, what have they gone through in that day that they obviously don't feel like anybody cares?
Right. And there's a statement by Matt Kahn, whom I don't know, but it resonates, I think, with this situation that you described. And what he said was, remember, despite how open, loving, and peaceful you attempt to be, people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. So that gives us something to consider, to reflect, that despite how open and loving and peaceful you attempt to be, people can only meet you as deeply as they've been met themselves. So it's a great way to, I think, bring back hope and to be ready to be amazed by people.
Right. So our signature question of the show is, what does working from your happy place mean to you?
Oh, that's an easy answer for me. It means being authentic.
There you go.
It means this alignment between what I'm doing, what I'm saying, believing in the abundance of those around me, and that together we all rise.
That's great. And advice that you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Be yourself. Be a person of integrity. Be the genuine article. That is the piece of advice that I would give. I don't think, it's a lot like those statements, do your best, be your best. Back to Jung, I mean, the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who we are.
Right.
And that takes a lot of work for a lot of people.
It does. But I think there's hope, right?
There's always hope.
That's
Even
right.
when our situations seem intractable, that when our differences seem insurmountable, what we can do is we can figure out, well, where is this dispute? Is it over facts? Is it over the method that we're using? Is it over a process, or is it over our values? And we can work there despite the polarities and seeming differences that we have that separate us.
Great. So, Mike, in closing, what are some new and exciting things that you are working on that you think our listeners might benefit from? And then please tell us where they can find you.
I am so excited about making an impact with authentic leadership in the world and making a difference in that regard, and helping organizations and people and individual leaders to achieve that in life, to bring more of who they are to what they do, to bring their best to every situation. So I'm working on coaching folks in that regard. I'm working on a couple of writing activities on authentic change and how leaders produce authentic change in organizations. The best place for your audience to reach me is at Mike-Horne, Horne.com. Once again, it's Mike-Horne.com. You'll find some free ebooks out there. You'll find a way to get in touch with me. And I would love, Belinda, to be in touch with any of your guests relative to their questions about working and living authentically.
That's great. Well, thanks again, Mike, for being with us today. And for our audience, don't forget, Mike's book is Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically. Thank you so much for joining us today at Work From Your Happy Place. And we hope that you will subscribe or follow us so that you don't miss a single great episode. We'll see you the next time on Work From Your Happy Place.
Thanks for joining us at Work From Your Happy Place. If you like what you hear, please share it with your friends, and be sure to rate and review us on iTunes or Stitcher. For a free gift on finding your own happy place, please visit workfromyourhappyplace.com and click on the free audio button. Thanks again for listening.